And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection, your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. When Europeans began to settle in the eastern part of North America, before Canada was a country, Britain recognized that indigenous people who were already living here had title to the land. The Royal Proclamation of 1763 declared that only the British Crown could take possession of lands from First Nations, and only by treaties. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives to bring you this story from 1993.
North Coast Tribal Council, representing 7 native bands in the Prince Rupert area, met in mid-November. Much of the discussion was on land claims negotiations. The same week the Tribal Council's annual assembly was held, the BC Treaty Commission issued a call for Aboriginal groups across BC to begin the land claims process by sending letters of intent to negotiate. Ovid Mercredy's visit to Prince Rupert was well-timed. He gave delegates a larger perspective on what the land claims process will mean to them. Mercredy says the move by the federal and provincial governments in recent years to settle the land claims issue has been very important.
When you think about it, what have the governments agreed to do? They have agreed to negotiate with our people in this province, nation to nation. They have agreed to make treaties with us with respect to Aboriginal title and resources. But we have even a greater opportunity than just to negotiate for more land and resources in this province. You stand to be the first Aboriginal people in this country to also settle. At the same time, when we deal with land, the issue of sovereignty, the sovereignty of our people. You are in a very enviable position. And for that, your leaders in this province must be congratulated. We will be able to resolve issues of jurisdiction. We'll be able to resolve the question of sovereignty. But it does not mean that we will have the mechanisms to exercise our self-government. The government of Canada, the provincial government, can't give us that. Only we can create our forms of government. And what we do will determine whether we succeed or not. And many of us have to re-examine ourselves. We have to review who we are. And we have to question the Indian Act. Because we cannot build a culture on the Indian Act. We cannot build self-government on the Indian Act. And we cannot build jurisdiction over land on the Indian Act. But we can do it on our past. We can do it on our culture. We can do it on the basis of our own traditional beliefs and values.
Much of the recent impetus to resolve land claims has come from the BC Treaty Commission. Mercredy says the Treaty Commission has been a good first step in the land claims process.
Well, I think the mechanism is there. You know, the commitment is there by the governments. And all we need to do now is to initiate the process for negotiations. But it's not as simple as that. And that's why I'm here, because I'm talking about some of the realities we're going to face, because there will be some resistance on the part of some individuals for economic reasons and perhaps other reasons to allowing our people to carry on with their self-government and with a land base and a resource base. So it's not going to be, that simple. It's not going to be an easy process, but I believe that through public education, and my message to the people here, the people I represent, First Nations, is that they have to reach out themselves and they have to make sure that they have public support for their endeavors.
So far, only one native nation has made it beyond the preliminary stages of settling their land claim, the Nisga'a. They're expected to reach a formal settlement with Ottawa and Victoria next year. Mercredy sees the Nisga'a claim as an important precedent to the other claims that will follow.
Well, I think, whenever you make a breakthrough, it's a step forward, and you can build on that.
Can we see this as basically what we'll see in the rest of the cases in BC?
Well, I think each case will be different because, like, the reaction to people to land claims in Victoria Island won't be the same as it will be, say, here in Prince Rupert. Here there's a lot more land, a lot more crown land than down south, so I think you have to judge each situation separately.
But despite the rosy outlook, McCurdy does have words of caution for Native people that it will be some time yet before Aboriginal self-government becomes a reality.
It could take as long as 5 years, or it could take longer. A lot depends, I think, on the parties involved. Like, for example, you look at the Niskas, they've been negotiating for quite a few years now. And part of the problem there is the policies of the federal government. So if the policies change to allow for more flexibility in terms of what can be negotiated, I think we can make progress faster. For example, the inherent right of self-government has to be part of the land claims negotiations. At the present time, the policies don't allow for that, so the policies have to change.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. Archaeological evidence have been uncovered wooden toy boats from centuries ago. One such 1,000-year-old boat was recently uncovered in a filled-in well on a small farmstead in Norway. As it seems, children always wanted to float things on water. Let us return to the archive as Keith Smith shares about his childhood dreams.
I've had dreams of a boat since I was a kid. And I played with toy boats, and I did all these sorts of things as a child. And as I grew up, I built bigger and bigger boats, and this is a dream. And it's one I've been looking at for probably 30 years.
Yes, it was a 30-year dream. But about 10 years ago, Keith Arnold Smith took the first step to turning that dream into a reality.
I looked at various options. We looked at ferro cement, we looked at wood, picked a lot of brains, and finally come up with, well, the best thing to do if we wanted to meet any deadline at all would be to buy a fiberglass hull and deck and then finish it out ourselves. And so we did. We looked around and we found a Spencer boat that works in Vancouver who manufactured a boat we thought would just be ideal for us. And in 1983 we bought the hull and transported it up to Terrace and built a building around it. And then from there I just progressed stage by stage, very slowly, but here it is, you see it.
By purchasing that hull, the commitment was made. It was the beginning of a very long, hard process.
Okay, 1986 was the first major piece of work I did, and that was a keel. And that was about a good 4 months' work, all told, after hours, holidays, weekends, and whatnot. We had that done at the end of '86. And then I left it again for 1988 until I retired. And then we started on it full tilt. And except for maybe 5 months off between then and now, the hull's been completed. All the work's been completed in that time slot. So basically I've spent about 5 years on it.
This is basically your life.
Yes, for 5 years it's been, I've been my total occupation. I've done nothing else but work on the boat. I've been thinking about it, living it, dreaming it, and spending it.
Ah, yes, spending it. Now, if you think building your own yacht from scratch in the backyard is a way to save money, well, Keith has some words of advice.
I would say that if you have the capability to build a boat, you can build it, all right, but it's not going to be any cheaper than buying one. The advantage of buying a boat is that it's there for you, ready to go, and you can go sailing. The advantage of building it is that you can build the boat exactly as you want, with all the mechanical, electrical, and marine features that you wish, and they're all, in your knowledge, you know exactly what you've got. You build all the safety into it you need, and you feel it's, necessary, and you know every stitch in it. That's a big feature from my point of view.
So if you're out at sea and something goes wrong, you're going to know where to go immediately because you put it there. That's
part of my thinking. And the other part of it is that I know it's done right.
To ensure his boat had everything he needed in the way of safety and wanted in the way of comfort, Keith had to spend as much time, if not more, on planning for the boat as he did actually building it. But he says that planning time paid off.
It went relatively smoothly because I didn't take a step until I'd taken 4 backwards and then take a run at it from several directions before, making a move. Because once you lock yourself in, especially if you're doing the cabin sole and all the work underneath it, there's very little recall. You can't undo unless you do a terrible lot of tearing out. Because the floor is all, the cabin sole is all, like there's all the conduits and the water lines and all the tankage. Pretty hard to retrieve yourself from that kind of a situation. So you have to make sure, or reasonably sure, as sure as you can, that what you're doing is going to be, you're looking far enough down the line that you can do what you want to do. Actually, it's Keith and Thora trials, not a boat trial, because I know the boat will be all right. It's just going to be us that are, have to learn. We've never sailed a boat this size. We've sailed dinghies a lot, and sailing is sailing. But handling the boat is a different thing. Being the master of the vessel is, and knowing all the rules of the road and all that sort of stuff, which you have to do. It's essential as far as I'm concerned, and for our safety. But this is going to be, a total new tack for us. We're looking forward to it.
Certainly won't be boring.
You bet not. No, it won't be boring. I'm sure of that. It's going to be a great deal of fun.
Do you have any immediate plans for taking it around, say, this area or out to sea?
Yes, our basic plans are to be in Victoria for the winter, the winter of 93, 94. And then we'll probably sail back in March, which is the earliest we want to come back, late March, like. And then we plan on doing the Queen Charlotte's and maybe Alaska the following year. And then winters, if we do well with the vessel and we like the life, afloat, then probably down to the Sea of Cortez or like the Baja for a winter or 2 winters, and then back up here again.
Any thoughts of the proverbial round the world? Hawaii and then maybe on, or?
Not necessarily. What I'd like to do is I'd like to see Canada. I've never been across Canada, by vehicle. So we're kind of thinking of going around the East Coast and doing the East Coast of Canada, the United States. And doing that and seeing the East Coast and maybe getting across Canada, in one summer at least by vehicle, and then back to boat again, and maybe to the Bahamas and then up to the Mediterranean. Who knows? Only time will tell that one.
And now, left with only the possessions that can be stored aboard their yacht, a new life begins. Any second thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just been a very pleasant 5 years. It's after you've been living and raising family for 40 years, which we have, there comes a time for change, and this is it. Do I look unhappy? No, it's been well worth it, I'll tell you that right now.
And the best is yet to come.
Yeah, you bet.
Yes, the best is yet to come. For unlike people whose retirement homes are on the 14th fairway or by the beach or near the lake, Keith and Thora's new backyard will be the world. As Keith mentioned, they're spending this winter in Victoria and will sail back to the Queen Charlotte Islands and perhaps Alaska in the spring. But once they adjust to life aboard their new home and become more comfortable handling the sea reach, that new backyard may beckon. And then for Keith and Thora Arnold Smith, well, the sea's the limit.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Participation in arts allows students to grow their self-esteem and self-confidence, developing poise and learning to overcome anxieties. Performing arts help teach children both self-reliance as well as collaboration with others in order to reach a goal. Let us return to the archives with Caledonia Secondary School students.
My pencil, you blockhead!
Students at Caledonia Secondary School in Terrace have been very busy lately preparing for their production of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, showing this weekend at the R.E.M. Lee Theatre. It's the school's first musical since the early 1980s and stars grade 12 student Graham Marshall as Charlie Brown, while Lucy is played by Ellie Higginson, who's in grade 11.
This next question deals with certain character traits you may have observed. Regarding personality, would you say that mine is A, forceful, B, pleasing, or C, objectionable? Would that be A, B, or C, Charlie Brown? What would you say to that? Charlie Brown, A, B, or C?
I guess I'd have to say forceful, Lucy,
well, then we'll put a check mark at the letter A then. This next question deals with physical appearance. In referring to my beauty, would you say that I was stunning, mysterious, or intoxicating?
Well, gee, I don't know. You look just fine to me.
Stunning. All right, Charlie Brown, that about does it, I guess. Thank you very much for your cooperation.
Certainly, Lucy, anytime. Come on, Snoopy.
Oh, just one more question.
Many long hours of preparation have gone into this production since early October.
Is Lucy Van Pelt the sort of person you would like to have as president of your club?
First of all, we basically just started working on lines mostly. And we just came here like every day after school and stuff like that. Well, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and then worked on Sundays and stuff, and we just come here and practice, going through the play and stuff like that, scene by scene.
Final touches are the hardest thing. Like, it's one thing to know your lines and to kind of know where you are on stage, but then it's like everybody working together and like finally having everything polished and like being able to actually put on a performance. It's going to be enjoyable to people.
The stage director for Your Good Man, Charlie Brown, is Don McLeod. He says there's lots of pre-planning to do, like setting dates, deciding what to add or take away from the play, and what kind of money to put into it. Then there's casting, and he explains what they were looking for this year.
We kind of had to think about the talent, obviously. Could they hold a tune? Could they sing? Did they have some kind of presence? We also looked at how they looked as a group together. You know, there is that, because they're stock characters, everybody sort of thinks of Linus being a certain shape and Lucy being a certain character. So we kept that in mind.
He says this year's production has made the students a close-knit group.
A musical seems to do that, you know, it brings everybody together. It's brought members of our staff together. We've had some boys in construction that have joined in that wouldn't normally be seen dead at a theater even, you know, at a stage-type theater anyway, who joined in and helped with construction of sets and things. And the group itself has come together. They begin to, even in acting it happens as well. Once they start working on something together, they all feel part of it and it gels nicely.
One of the most difficult things the directors found was integrating the actors' lines and the music.
The music's got to line up. It's like, I guess it's more like a movie. You've got to have the soundtrack's got to line up with the show. And this one's quite a bit more like a movie. Some of the shows, the music's in for the song, and then it's out, where this one's got reoccurring music through it, so it's more difficult to line up the soundtrack with the play.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
2 tragic deaths in Quebec, along with several cases of neck laceration, made headlines in the 1980s. The equipment problems that played a major role in the accidents led to community stakeholders to seek a standard on neck protectors from the B&Q. In this final segment of Open Connection, we return to the archives with Bob Park.
As of January 1st, if minor hockey players don't wear a specially certified throat protector, they won't be allowed on the ice. A ruling from the Canadian Amateur Hockey Association, passed at their spring annual meeting, states all players must wear a throat protector, which has been stamped by the B&Q Standards Act. The new hockey law originally came into play in September, causing havoc for parents, players, and suppliers. The supply simply couldn't meet the demand, something store owners now say is under control.
They've definitely leveled off now, but I still think there's a lot of kids out there that have said, oh, we don't have to wait till January 1st now. And I still feel we're going to have a rush in the next month.
So do you have enough supply to meet the demand right now?
Who knows? We don't know what the demand's going to be, but I think we're in good shape.
The CAHA had been looking for a standard for throw protectors for a while, but instead of waiting for the Canadian Standards Association to come up with one, they jumped on the BNQ.
I think what really happened with the whole neck protector scene was Canadian Standards Association did not have a CSA standard for neck guard manufacturing. And the only people that had it was the BNQ, which is the Quebec Approval Association, I believe associated with minor hockey in Quebec. So what happened was they had an approval, so Canadian Amateur Hockey, rather than waiting for the CSA to come out with something, jumped on the bandwagon and said, well, we'll go with BNQ standards. Now, unfortunately, and I really don't agree with it, I would say that 95% of the neck guards that are out this year are exactly the same as last year's, except they have a BNQ stamp on the neck somewhere, and it's just this little hammer look with the circle, and that is the B&Q stamp, basically.
Brian Downey is with Terrace Minor Hockey and thinks the new guards are necessary.
The throw protector is part of a program by Canadian Amateur to change some of our rules to make hockey more safe, to reduce the risk of injury. So the throw protector is part of it. Some of our new penalties are checking from behind penalties or stick penalties. They're intended to reduce the risk of injury. And so as part of that package, it's kind of all in the name of good risk management that these are put into place. So hopefully we'll make hockey a better, a safer game.
Now a parent comes in and tells you, I just bought a throw protector last year. It's the same thing as the new one. It just doesn't have the BNQ stamp on it. Can't little Bobby wear this? Has that been a problem?
I've heard that, and I understand, but the ruling is that unfortunately all players will have to have them, and they have to have the BNQ certification. So unfortunately there's no option.
Originally, thoughts were only one kind of throw protector would be available. That hasn't been the case.
This ring style is approved, and it just basically goes on like that, sits around the neck in that manner, and it is BNQ approved as well, being a cut-proof material. So it doesn't have to be a bib, but it has to have the BNQ stamp, and there's not a neck guard that was manufactured previous to this year that has the BNQ stamp.
Why are there new guards this year? What's the big difference between the guards this year compared to last year's guards?
A lot of the guards are not different. It's just that this year they've had to have a B&Q approval on them. In the past, CSA standards have never had a standard or a number that they have applied to an approved neck guard. There's never been an approved neck guard. And the Canadian Amateur Hockey decided for minor hockey leagues that they wanted to go with some kind of approved neck guard, and the scenes that there wasn't one from CSA standards, they went with the B&Q approved, which is interesting because it originates in Quebec. So of course the first ones to have B&Q approved were all Quebec companies. But that's kind of how it comes, and then it evolved into across Canada, bang, you've got to have them.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.